Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. So today I got a crazy current events video for you guys. If you guys aren't familiar with these are videos in which I talk about these ridiculous stories that I've seen and I give my thoughts on them. And this story, I saw this story 2 weeks ago, and I was checking to see if there's any update on this story, and there hasn't. But this story, it really upset me, really pissed me off. And when you find out what happened in this story, is you're also going to be really, really mad. And as somebody who also likes history, have a lot of respect for World War II veterans, is this story just makes me so furious. And I just hate this woman so much. This woman is evil for me. When you find out what this woman did, how she basically scammed a World War II veteran out of his entire life savings and, destroyed his mental health and probably contributed to his early death, which we'll talk about that in this video. But the story is just really, really really sad, really messed up. And this was a family member. This was somebody that was supposed to, that he had trust in, but had basically backstabbed him and was greedy and was just stealing all of his money and did not help him out in his elderly years. And also, it turns out that this World War II veteran, that he is actually from a very famous unit called the Tuskegee Airmen. So anyways, let's watch this video, and I'll also break down the history, and I'll tell you guys what unit the guy was from and what's going on here. But let's watch this video here. And I'm honestly surprised this case is not going viral. I think this case should go viral because it's how this is just so messed up, this whole thing.
We're digging into a once trusted Cook County judge. She was supposed to be helping an elderly man manage his money. Instead, she was taking large amounts for herself. That man was a Tuskegee Airman who fought for his country while battling segregation. Then, this.
Well, I've known Lawton since I was a baby. He's my grandfather's best friend. He's a Tuskegee Airman, World War II veteran, just an all-around wonderful person.
That's Lawton Wilkerson making history as one of America's first black military pilots. Tuskegee Airmen took frontline risks and then took heat as boundary breakers that many didn't like.
Dealing with segregation, dealing with all of that while still also flying. It is amazing.
After the military, he flew for fun, became a Chicago-based radio technician. He married, never had kids, and saved for his golden years.
It was clear Lawton should have had hundreds of thousands of dollars, certainly enough to take care of him for the rest of his life, because he'd worked so hard and saved so hard.
So about this is for people that aren't familiar with the unit, the Tuskegee Airmen was an all-black African-American air squadron during World War II. And this squadron was actually one of the most elite, best squadrons of World War II. They had some of the best victories in the war. They flew over 1,500 missions. And there's a popular myth that they've never lost a bomber. That's not entirely true. They did lose a few bombers, but it was very rare. Compared to other units who escorted bombers, they lost way less bombers than other units. Much less. So these guys were really good in the air. These guys were really good pilots. And these guys helped turn the war in our favor. These guys were heroes. These guys did a lot for their country. Now, this guy here, he was actually part of a bomber squadron in the Tuskegee Airmen. The Tuskegee Airmen, they also appear in that movie Red Tails and the older movie The Tuskegee Airmen also. They were known for the red tails that they had on their planes, but a lot of people just think of fighter pilots when they think of the Tuskegee Airmen. But the Tuskegee Airmen also did have their own bomber squadrons, but he was part of one of those bomber squadrons, and he was assigned to them. I wasn't able to see what missions he flew. I tried to look that up. It says that he earned his wings in 1946. That was by the time the war was over, but he did participate in the Tuskegee Airmen in 1944, so it's possible that he was on missions as part of a bomber, but I wasn't able to find out a little bit more than that. But regardless, this guy was part, a World War II veteran, and this guy was part of a very, well-known elite squad. This is one of the best, squads that the U.S. had during World War II. This was a highly decorated unit. And so you think of the things that this guy went through at the time, because when this guy was trying to become a pilot, is you had segregation in the military. So you had, all black units during World War II, and you had all white units. And the Tuskegee Airmen, like I said, was an all black unit. So it was very difficult for, black men to become pilots during World War II. But the Tuskegee Airmen was one of the few units where they could actually do stuff like that. And segregation ended during the Korean War, 5 years later after World War II when Truman ended it. So, this guy went through a lot, in his youth, and also, what he went through in World War II as well. But, to have something like this happen to him now, where he basically gets scammed and has all of his money stolen, well, let's continue the video and then we'll explain a little bit of the history here.
Tell the truth, I was doing that because I wanted to fly.
But at age 94, for a man who spent a lifetime trying to avoid it,
I came here.
Turbulence arrived.
Patricia Martin was seen as another kind of adopted family member, seen as someone who was trustworthy, who he cared about, who cared about him.
When I first became the presiding judge of
Martin, a relative through marriage, was viewed as the best person to oversee his finances. He had
So that judge, she was his niece through his marriage. So through his marriage to his wife originally.
plenty to ride out his final years at this Southside retirement home.
Every box for trustworthiness seemed to be checked there, and so she seemed like the perfect person.
A lawyer turned judge who spent 24 years on the bench, rising to the top judge in Cook County's juvenile court.
She'd been appointed to a nationwide commission by President Obama dealing with vulnerable children. She seemed like the perfect person on paper. In hindsight, she was not.
In August 2020, word came from the nursing home
That account balances weren't right, checks were being dishonored.
the facility hadn't been paid in months. Lawton was $41,000 behind.
We started by contacting Patricia Martin. She attempted to dodge and evade, and she didn't seem to have the time to return a phone call over such an important thing.
Critical for Wilkerson, with his money now missing, he was told he was going to have to move out of the place he called home if things
my
didn't
God.
get settled.
She stole the money, we can see from some of the documents.
11 withdrawals over 18 months, pocketing more than $245,000, shutting down accounts without telling anyone, moving most of her new wealth into harder to track Bitcoin.
It's hard to think of something more evil for her to have done, but she did.
Her final withdrawal came just 7 days before the barrier-breaking Wilkerson died.
All of her actions, they shock the conscience, and you'd think that if she was innocent, that would have caused her to want to communicate right away, but she didn't.
So about this is she was in charge of his finances. She was supposed to help manage his finances. He was an elderly man. He should not be worrying about his finances at this time. This is the time for, him to relax, spend some time with his family. He shouldn't have to be going through that stress, but she was instead stealing all of that stuff. And, for somebody who has, done so much for their country and the things that he's gone through is, this should be the time where he should be taken care of. He should be able to relax, rest, and he should be taken care of. But, this woman, she was so greedy with his money that she didn't even bother paying the nursing home that he was staying at. So she didn't even pay the bill for that. There was $41,000 in unpaid bills, and he was going to get thrown out. So imagine at his age, how old he is, going to get thrown out of that home. And then she was just buying Bitcoin with all of that money that she was that she was pocketing from him.
She didn't communicate with them and later ignored the judge overseeing the lawsuit. Martin repeatedly failed to show up for court hearings, the judge ordering her to halt all transactions. But court documents show she ignored that too, continuing to move money.
It makes me wonder what is wrong in Patricia's heart that she would do that to somebody.
In the end, the judge ordered Martin to pay triple what she took, $1.1 million for the $250,000 she stole.
It was a very nice feeling to see judgment enter, to see the court system taking it seriously, to see that despite the fact that Patricia had been a judge herself, that she's not above the law.
But she knows the law and used it to get that $1 million judgment thrown out, in part because Wilkerson had died.
She tried to drag it out, I believe hoping that my grandfather and other people would pass away before justice could be served.
Martin lost her law license as a result of all this, admitting the evidence would clearly and convincingly establish the facts and conclusions of misconduct. Misconduct we asked her about back in 2023.
Judge Martin, is there anything you'd like to say to the Wilkerson family about what's been going on? You can speak to my attorney.
In the months that followed, this became a criminal case, too. Martin charged with money laundering and financial exploitation of an elderly person. Late last year, that case quietly ended as she pled guilty to one felony theft count, sentenced to 4 years of probation.
Probation and a felony conviction for that sort of theft from that sort of a victim just is not quite enough.
In the end, his care never suffered. But for a man whose legacy is etched in history, the moves and manipulation of Patricia Martin is etched in the minds of those that loved Lawton most.
Lawton was such a fine man, one of the finest people I have ever met in my life. And Patricia Martin is one of the absolute worst humans. And to see that contrast between them is breathtaking.
Patricia Martin declined to speak with us for this story. Lawton Wilkerson's loved ones are planning to file another lawsuit, continuing their fight to get back the money Martin took. All this as the disgraced and disbarred former judge continues to draw her government pension.
Oh my God.
Here, that case quiet.
So she's still getting a pension. Look, here's the thing is, one of the people that are some of the most difficult to prosecute a lot of times are police officers, judges, prosecutors, and lawyers. And the reason that these people are oftentimes so difficult to prosecute
as she pled
is because they know the system so well. Is she specifically dragged this case out. She made this case last as long as possible. She knew that he was sick. She knew that he was old. She was trying to drag the case out on purpose just so that he would pass away and that she would not have to pay that judgment. And so I looked a little bit more into this case. She had to pay like a little bit over $100,000 to his estate. To his remaining family, she had to pay a little bit over $100,000. But I was reading in one article that she actually stole more than $380,000 from this guy. And so she was only ordered to pay like a little bit over $100,000. And the court originally said that she had to pay over $1 million, so triple the amount that she had actually stolen. But when he passed away, she had argued that she doesn't have to pay this anymore because he's dead. So look at this. On February 8, 2023, plaintiff died. And it says, defendant Patricia M. Martin, by and through her undersigned attorneys, respectively moves this court vacate the default judgment entered against her, and states as followed. Plaintiff filed his complaint. So September 21st, 2022, that's when he knew about this. So before he passed away, he knew about this. He knew that she had scammed him. He knew that she had stolen his money. He filed a complaint against her, means he's suing her. On December 9, 2022, plaintiff issued discovery request to defendant. On February 8, 2023, plaintiff died. And so the stupid court threw that judgment out, that over $1 million that she had to pay. She doesn't have to pay that anymore. And now his remaining family, they are actually suing her, and they're trying to appeal to the court to try to get that judgment back. But I don't know if anything's going to happen. This is why I waited a couple weeks for this to cover the story. This video is also a month old because I wanted to see if there would be any updates, but there so far has not been any updates. And my question here is, what the hell was the court doing in this case? So according to the reporter, she has been disbarred, so she's not a judge anymore. At least there's that. But she's apparently getting a pension still. That's at least according to the reporter at the end. So she's still at least getting a pension, and she still pocketed an extra $100,000. What happened to that money? She was ordered to pay over $100,000 restitution, but she stole close to over $300,000. So what happened to the rest of the money? She's basically pocketing it, and the punishment that she gets, 4 years in probation. The amount of money that she's stolen, over, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's a felony. Felony is punishable by more than a year in prison. The amount that she's stolen. And on top of that, abuse of an elderly person, manipulating them. And I don't have proof for this, guys, but I will tell you this. In my opinion, I think that this case killed him earlier. That's what I think happened, because the amount of stress that this guy dealt with, the amount of mental health problems that he had from this, just imagine this, that just imagine what this guy must have been going through, that thinking that somebody that's supposed to take care of you, one of your family members, your niece from your wife's side, he trusted her, he put his trust into her, and she did this to him, stole all of his life savings. That's everything he worked for his entire life. Imagine that, from all the way from World War II until today. He's saved up all that money. That is his life savings. And she stole all of that and just put that all into Bitcoin. Imagine the mental health problems that he dealt with, the stress that he dealt with. I think that this contributed to an early death for him. I think it did. I think this destroyed his health. He probably could have lived a couple more years longer than this. So I think that this woman should get way more than this in prison, and she should have to pay back the amount. But I'm honestly not surprised that this happened in Chicago with the Chicago courts, because the Chicago courts, I don't want to get into the whole political drama, but the Chicago courts, they are just so lenient on a lot of this stuff. They're constantly releasing these people from prison. You have people that are committing crimes over and over again, and they're constantly releasing them. They're constantly releasing these guys out on the streets over and over and over again. I remember I read a story about this guy who had attacked multiple people in Chicago, and the person constantly gets arrested, constantly gets released by the courts over and over and over again. But now you got a corrupt judge, and of course, she's gonna get a very, very light sentence too. So that's it. I'm honestly not surprised this happened in Chicago, because Chicago, it constantly lets people out, constantly people that goes easy on them and lets them out early. I don't know why Chicago does stuff like this, but like I said, Chicago constantly lets these criminals out over and over again and gives them very lenient punishments. This is also from the court documents that I found here. We concluded the default judgment rendered against Martin without the substitution of a proper plaintiff is not void, but is voidable. A judgment is void as opposed to voidable only if the court that entered it lacked jurisdiction. Here, the trial had jurisdiction over Wilkinson when his complaint was filed. When it was served on Martin, the court had also jurisdiction over Martin, who was served with the complaint and filed an appearance and answer while Wilkerson was alive. The court's jurisdiction, however, was suspended after Wilkerson's death, and the records indicate that the court had not issued an order to substitute a proper plaintiff pursuant to Section 2-1008B of the Code. Consequently, the court's default judgment against Martin, which was issued while the court's jurisdiction was suspended, is voidable. My God, so that $1 million, she did not have to pay that. And I found this article here from the Chicago Sun-Times. So this one says that she had stolen, more than $380,000, and she had to pay $122,000 in restitution. So Martin, who was head of the Cook County Juvenile Court's Child Protection Division until her 2020 retirement, appeared before Judge Terry Gallagher and pleaded guilty to one count of theft of a value between $100,000 and $500,000. She was sentenced to 4 years of probation in order to pay $122,763,000. So what the hell happened to the rest of the money? What happened to it? She stole $380,000 and she only had to pay $122,000. That means that she still made $260,000. She still pocketed $260,000. That was at least enough to pay for her legal team and also for her to live comfortably after that. She might not be a judge anymore, but you know what? Why did this court only say that she had to pay $122,000? Disgusting. But enough of that. I did want to read about the guy a little bit here. So I'll also link this down below. Oscar Lawton Wilkerson Jr., Class 45 FTE 98945, Second Lieutenant, Chicago Heights, Illinois. Unit 617th Bomber Squadron of the 477th Bombardier Group. Tuskegee Airmen and Radio Programming Executive Oscar Lawton Wilkerson Jr. was born on February 9, 1926 in Chicago Heights, Illinois to Oscar L. and Elizabeth Wilkerson. After his graduation from Bloomfield Township High School in 1944, Wilkerson entered the U.S. Army Air Force's Aviation Cadet Training Program in Tuskegee, Alabama. He was assigned to the 617th Bombardier Squadron, where he was trained to fly the B-25 Billy Mitchell bomber. Wilkerson received his commission as second lieutenant and his wings as a B-25 pilot in 1946. In 1947, he graduated from the New York Institute of Photography. Wilkerson also graduated from the Midwest Broadcasting School in 1960. Wilkerson became a weekend disc jockey and community relations director at WBEE AM in Harvey, Illinois, 1962. As an on-air personality, he was known as the Weekend Wilkie. As community relations director, he launched a weekly radio show hosted by Chicago Alderman Charles Chu, as well as publicity campaigns for the NAACP, the Chicago Urban League of the Committee of 100 and other organizations. Wilkerson was also promoted to the position of program director at WEE in 1965. Under Wilkerson's supervision, WEE launched a radio career of Mary D., who became known as Mary D., the Honeybee. In 1969, he oversaw the station switch to a more jazz-oriented format and took on the additional responsibilities of operations manager. Wilkerson also hosted his own program, Wilkes World, on weekday mornings. Wilkerson left WEE in 1971 to become the public affairs director at WAMAQ Radio. In that role, he was responsible for all the public service material aired on the station. Wilkerson was named program director at WMAQ in 1973 and served there until his retirement in 1988. Following his retirement, Wilkerson served as president of the multimedia ministry at New Faith Baptist Church in Madison, Illinois. He is one of the documented original Tuskegee Airmen and is active in the Chicago Dodo chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, Inc., helping minority and at-risk youth fly for free through the Young Eagles program. Wilkerson regularly visits schools around the United States to tell this story to Tuskegee Airmen. He lives in Markham, Illinois. Note, the 617 Bombardier Squadron was one of the 4 Tuskegee Airmen bomber squadrons during World War II that made up the 477th Bombardier Group. The 477th Bombardier Group and its assigned 616, 617, 618, and 619 Bombardier Squadrons never deployed overseas for combat during World War II. In 2007, the 477th Bombardment Group became the 477th Fighter Group, bringing it with the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen to Alaska. So he didn't end up serving in combat during World War II, it says here. He did want to, he was, 18 in 1944 and he underwent training. If the war dragged on for a little bit longer, he would have definitely served in combat, but this guy is a hero. This guy has, made it in one of the most elite units in World War II. And just imagine this, that, you serve your country, you go through segregation, you go through tough times, and, eventually you build a career for yourself, you work hard. And this guy, from everything that I'm reading about this guy was a really good person. He went to schools, he talked to kids, told them about the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. He did a lot of volunteer work here. And just imagine it, like I said, serving your country, going through all of that, and then, at the end of your life, to just have one of your family members just basically just steal all of your money like that, just betray you, backstab you. That should be the time when, he should be able to relax. He should, he served his country. He should be taken care of at that point. But no, this, this evil, horrible, disgusting judge, corrupt judge did this to him. And this is just such a miscarriage of justice is what this is exactly. 4 years of probation, and she didn't even have to pay back all the money that she stole. What kind of justice is that exactly? So I feel so bad about what this guy had went through. This definitely destroyed his mental health, and I think it probably contributed to an early death for him as well. Just imagine the amount of stress that he went through. Just imagine that, you're sitting in a nursing home, and then one day you're told you're getting thrown out because the payments haven't been getting made. And then, when he finally brings this to court and he sues the woman to get his money back, the stupid judge, because she knows the system so well, drags the case out for just so long, hoping that he dies, and he eventually dies. And then she uses that to basically get that $1 million judgment thrown out. Just absolutely disgusting. I don't know what this court was doing in Chicago. The court failed this guy. The courts failed this guy. So he served his country, but unfortunately his country failed him in the end. The government there and the courts have just completely failed. And this is just, like I said, a miscarriage of justice. It's just really sad. I like history a lot. I know who the Tuskegee Airmen were. And so this just really just pisses me off. I just am so angry. I'm just so angry at this woman, what she put this guy through. But thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down below. I'll put all the links down below if you want to check out the video and read more about this guy. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.